Her closest male friend ridiculed me during dinner. She deserves someone far better than you, he sneered. I put him in his place in front of everyone, she exploded. Say sorry or we're done. I just smirked. I stayed silent. But when she returned home weeks later, she discovered what done truly meant. For 3 years, my life with Emma had been solid. Wonderful, even. As a lawyer, my days are spent navigating the darkest corners of human behavior. Coming home to her was like a gust of clean air. She was a paralegal, sharp as a tack, with a burning ambition to attend law school and carve out her own legacy. I admired that fire in her. We were partners constructing a future in a home I'd spent years renovating. It felt secure, genuine. I wasn't just covering expenses for a girlfriend. I was investing in the woman I planned to marry. Yet there was always a faint disturbance, a subtle undercurrent of something off. And that disturbance had a name. Evan. Evan was her best friend from university. He was a graphic designer, the kind who calls himself an artist and acts like a desk job is a curse worse than death. Meanwhile, he was scraping by, designing logos for local diners to barely afford his rent. To Emma, he was her rock, her platonic confidant, the guy who shielded her. To me, he was a freeloader with an inflated ego hell-bent on undermining our relationship. He was skilled at it, I'll admit. His attacks were never overt enough to confront directly. They were sly jabs, little barbs masked as praise. Her ex, Nathan, a singer who'd broken her heart, was his go-to subject. If I took Emma on a lavish trip to the Caribbean, Evan would somehow mention a carefree road trip they'd once taken. "Remember that, Emma?" he'd say, all nostalgic. "You can't script moments like those, you need someone who vibes with your wild soul." The implication was clear. I was the dull, safe bet. And he was the keeper of the thrilling life she was abandoning. Emma, she soaked it up. She was completely taken in by his loyal friend routine. Whenever I suggested he was crossing a line, she'd get defensive. That's just Evan being Evan. He was there when Nathan crushed me. He's just looking out for me. He's like family, Mark. I'm a patient man. My job demands it. You don't leap at the first hint of trouble. You bide your time. You let the other side dig their own grave. And you wait for them to hand you the noose. I waited for Evan to hand me the noose. The opportunity arrived a month ago. I just clinched the biggest case of my career. 6 months of my life vanished. Endless late nights, weekends lost to documents, but we won. It was a massive victory for my firm and for me. To celebrate, I hosted a dinner party. My closest friends, who I'd barely seen for half a year, were there. Trying to be the bigger person, I told Emma to invite her crew, which inevitably meant Evan was coming. The evening was flawless. The house was filled with great company, the rare wine I'd saved was flowing, and I was finally unwinding. Evan, predictably, was guzzling the free drinks and acting like he owned the place. After a few glasses, he decided it was showtime. He launched into a tedious spiel about an art gallery, which was really just a setup to pontificate about the divide between creatives and corporate types. "It's a different lens on life," he said, staring right at me. "Some of us are fueled by passion, by art. Others are more practical." He took a slow, deliberate sip of my wine. My friends saw through his act and were giving him looks that could sour cream. I just offered a thin smile and stayed quiet, but he wasn't finished. He turned to Emma with a fake concerned expression. "I just want you to be happy, Emma," he said, his voice oozing crocodile tears. "Mark's a solid guy. He's steady. He's dependable, a provider." He spat out dependable like it was an insult. Then he paused, locked eyes with me, and let a smug grin creep across his face. "But let's be real, she could do so much better than you." And there it was. The noose. The room fell deathly quiet. You could have heard a fork clatter. My friends looked ready to leap across the table. Emma just stared at her plate, her cheeks flushed. She wasn't angry at him. She was just mortified he'd caused a scene. That was when everything clicked into focus for me. The fog cleared. The patient lawyer vanished. The man who'd just been blatantly disrespected in his own home in front of his friends by a guy freeloading off his hospitality was now in charge. I set my utensils down deliberately. I clasped my hands on the table and fixed my gaze on Evan. The gracious host was gone. The interrogator had taken his place. "That's a bold statement, Evan," I said, my voice low and steady. "I'm curious about your logic. In your expert opinion, what does a better man for Emma look like? Be specific. Lay out the qualities." Evan was caught off guard. He was ready for a shouting match, not a calm, surgical dissection. "Oh, well, you know," he faltered, "someone more her match, a creative type, someone who truly gets her." "I see," I said, nodding. "So the key trait is being a creative." Fascinating theory, and I assume you consider yourself a prime example of this. I think I know her better than anyone, he said, puffing up. Excellent, I replied. So you're the benchmark. Let's test that. Let's add some tangible factors to this equation. Let's talk about investment. As everyone here knows, Emma's in her second year of law school, a top program with a hefty price tag. I'm covering it. All of it. It's a significant financial commitment, but more than that, it's a commitment to her potential and our shared future. So, Evan, as the self-proclaimed ideal for Emma, what have you contributed to her future lately, aside from your constant criticism of me? Evan's face drained of color. Emma gave me a frantic look. Mark, stop this, she whispered. I raised a hand to quiet her. My eyes stayed on Evan. I'm not finished. Let's discuss the car she drives. It's safe. It's dependable. It gets her to school and back. I bought it for her. Now you've got a car too, don't you, Evan? A trendy little convertible that seems to break down often. In fact, Emma's had to lend you money for repairs at least 3 times in the past 6 months, hasn't she? Money she took from the household account that, by the way, I'm the sole contributor to. So, Evan, I'm not just supporting Emma's future. I'm also footing the bill to keep your artsy little car running. You're welcome. One of my friends at the table choked back a laugh, masking it with a cough. Evan looked like he'd been punched. And finally, I said, leaning in, my voice quieter, let's talk about this house, the roof over her head. I own it. I pay the mortgage. I fix what breaks. You, on the other hand, have been late on your rent so often that Emma's had to bail you out, again with money I earned. So let's recap your argument for the group. Your stance is that a man who provides a stable home, a reliable car, and a fully funded elite education is a lesser choice for Emma. And that a better man, by your definition, is one who's a financial drain, who siphons her resources, and who repays her loyalty by relentlessly trying to sabotage her relationship out of what can only be a pitiful, obvious, and deeply unsettling fixation. Is that a fair summary of your case, Evan? I leaned back. The argument was over. The room was silent. Evan was a shattered man, a witness dismantled on the stand. He sat there, humiliated, speechless. I looked at my friends who were glaring at Evan with undisguised disdain. Then I looked at Emma. Her face was a whirlwind of emotions, but the one that prevailed, cutting through the shock and embarrassment, wasn't relief. It wasn't gratitude. It was pure, searing anger. She shot up from her chair, its legs screeching against the floor. Her body trembled. I can't believe you just did that, she hissed. You shamed him in front of everyone. He shamed himself, Emma, I said, my voice weary. I just laid out the facts. Apologize to him, she demanded, her eyes burning with rage. Right now, apologize to my best friend for what you did. Apologize or we're done. And there it was, the ultimatum, the final piece of evidence. She stood beside the ruin of a man exposed as a manipulative leech, and she was defending him. She was choosing him. The love I had for her didn't just fade, it was extinguished. I looked at her and saw her clearly for the first time. I didn't shout, I didn't argue, I just smiled. A small, sorrowful, and utterly final smile. Without another word, I stood, picked up my wine glass, and walked to the kitchen, leaving her alone in the silent dining room. The case was closed. The verdict was final. The fallout was swift. Emma and Evan left together in a storm of drama. She moved into his place that night, a choice no doubt fueled by her fury and his humiliation. In her mind, she'd thrown down the gauntlet, expecting me to grovel, to apologize, to fix what I'd broken. She didn't realize I'd simply accepted her terms. For 2 weeks, I went silent. I ignored her calls. I didn't respond to the flood of angry, then baffled, then desperate texts. I brushed off the mutual friends she sent to plead her case. I was invisible. Instead of pursuing her, I got to work. My house, once our home, now felt like a crime scene. I spent a weekend carefully packing every item she owned into boxes. It wasn't an act of anger, it was a purge. I was an executor, settling the estate of a dead relationship. When I finished, I stacked the boxes in the guest room, changed the locks, and updated the security codes. Then I made 2 calls. They weren't pleasant, but they were necessary. They were the logical outcome of the verdict she delivered at that dinner. The first was to the dean of admissions at her law school. I knew him well from my alumni work. In calm, professional terms, I explained that due to an irreversible change in my personal situation, the private fund I'd created to cover Emma's tuition was being discontinued. Effective immediately. The second call was to the managing partner at my firm. I'd pulled strings to secure Emma a prestigious summer internship there. It was a career-defining opportunity. I explained that an irreconcilable personal conflict had arisen, and the offer had to be withdrawn. I took no pleasure in this, but my support for her was built on our partnership. She demolished that foundation. She could no longer benefit from it. 2 weeks after the dinner, she appeared at my door. I watched her on the security camera, struggling with her key, her confusion turning to frustration when it didn't work. She finally rang the bell. I opened the door, keeping the chain on. She looked exhausted. The fiery anger was gone, replaced by a haggard desperation. Life with a broke, self-absorbed artist had clearly been a rude awakening. "Mark, we need to talk," she said. "No, Emma, we don't," I replied. "You made your choice. You can't throw away 3 years over one argument," she begged, tears welling. "I was upset. I wasn't thinking." "It wasn't an argument," I said. "It was a moment of clarity. You had a choice between your partner and the man who's been sabotaging our relationship, and you chose him. You demanded I apologize to him. You defended the leech. That's not something I can unsee." Panic set in as she realized I wasn't budging. "But everything we planned," she stammered. "Law school, the internship." "Yes, about that," I said, letting the silence linger. "Your final semester's tuition is due next week, isn't it? I hope you and Evan have a plan because my investment in our future is over." Her face paled. "What?" she whispered. "And the internship at my firm," I continued, unyielding. "That offer's been revoked. The firm takes conflicts of interest seriously." She staggered back, her hand covering her mouth. The internship was her golden ticket. The future she'd banked on was slipping away. "You can't do this," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Mark, please, you can't." "I already have," I said. "Actions have consequences. You gave me an ultimatum, apologize or we're done. I chose done. Now you live with the consequences. Go ask Evan for help, the man who's so much better than me. I'm sure his artistic brilliance includes a plan to cover your $50,000 tuition and replace the career you just lost." I shut the door on her tear-streaked face. I didn't feel joy, I didn't feel sorrow, I just felt calm. The trial was over. The aftermath was predictable. Emma's life unraveled. She had to drop out of law school months from graduating. Her dream was dead. She and Evan are still sharing his cramped apartment. From what I've heard, a miserable existence. She's consumed by bitterness over what he cost her, and he's trapped with a woman who's a constant, resentful reminder of his own failures. He got the girl, but he got a broken version of her he can't afford to repair. I didn't do this for vengeance. I did it for myself. A relationship is a contract, and she breached its core term, loyalty. My actions weren't punishment. They were enforcement of the terms. She wanted to know what done truly meant. Now she knows. It means the support stops, the investment ends, and the builder walks away, leaving you in the ruins of the home you helped destroy.